ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Check this out, we got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time for Re-Entry Monday with good friend and colleague, Mr. Scotty Webb, live from Tampa. As I'm live from a brisk, cool 27 degrees in Cape Cod, Mass, as we talk what happened over the weekend, of course, in college football, the championship games, the decision by the committee, and in the NFL, where the AFC, through the demise of a few teams and an injury to Daniel Jones, basically the playoff looks, the structure got set up pretty clearly. And so much to talk about today. And of course, the beginning of the hot stove winter meetings, baseball, hopefully a few signings today, maybe a trade or two. Maybe the Red Sox get Kyle Schwarber. I think he's staying in Philly. That's just my 2 cents there. Do they take Bregman, bring him back? Do they pivot? Do they go to Bo Bichette? Do they make a trade for Cole Ragans or someone else, whatever? So, but first and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. And of course, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steak, seafood, chops, appetizers, wines. Terry's got it all. Come on over to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Without further ado, let's bring him in. Scotty Webb. What's up, champ?
Hey, good morning. How about them Bucks ruining the Survivor Series?
I think there's like
11 people left or something.
Yeah, 11 or 9 actually, and the funny is, a couple weeks ago there was 4,000. So it's just how it works. It is what it is. There's so much to talk about. It's funny because I don't know where to begin, because each topic in my head right now, I think we could talk about for one show. My headline is the Chiefs' reign is officially over. Sounds like my fantasy football this year. I had one team that had the opportunity to get into the playoffs for $250,000, set up perfectly. Basically needed 100 points between Mahomes, Kels, Rice, and I got McConkey tonight, and I'm on pace to set an all-time record low for me. So, I do want to start in the college football. We watched the championship games, all the social media, who's in, who's out, all the false odds. Notre Dame minus 4,000 to be in. Indiana upset over Ohio State, which didn't do anything anyways. But I'm going to say it this way, Scott. The actual decision, and they won't say it this way, but the actual decision of Notre Dame versus Miami, Miami got in, and the final decision, because Tulane and JMU are in. We do know Notre Dame's better than both of them. It's a flawed system. We can get into that. But the actual decision came down to a 3-loss Alabama team versus a 2-loss Notre Dame team. And they chose the SEC. They chose the fact that we can't, take away from a team playing in the SEC championship. Yeah, basically BYU lost twice to the number 4 team, but they penalize is the word I was looking for. You can penalize BYU, but we can't penalize Alabama.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you could unpack here and you could read into, and you can kind of say, hey, this is what's going on. The way I see this is, if you remember back when, we had the polls, the AP polls, and the AP polls said, hey, these are the 1 and 2 teams, right? And then they didn't even play each other necessarily. If it was Ohio State, and Ohio State had to go to the Rose Bowl, and Georgia had to go to the Sugar Bowl, they wouldn't play each other, and the voting would be who won the championship. So we evolved to this process where at least the teams get to play on the field and do a little bit, right? So the whole mechanism is designed theoretically, and I say theoretically because I don't believe it, theoretically to put the best teams out there and let them play for the championship. That's what it's for. Well, the way I see this is it's pretty simple. Notre Dame, power rating wise, if you make a line, they're like the 2nd or 3rd best team in the country. They're that high on a power rank. So now you're going to throw them out. You're throwing them out. So I think that's wrong. A, B, I think that when it comes to it, there's no way that you, and I get it. It's the basketball thing. The Sweet 16, 64 teams, and you these Cinderella teams in there. Get them the hell out of college football. And I don't mean that in any disrespect. But when you got JMU that makes it in, and you got Tulane that makes it in, okay, and then you have, the BYUs of the world and the Notre Dames of the world who don't make it in. And then you look at the spread. The JMU is 21-point underdogs to Oregon in that game, and Tulane is 16.5-point underdogs to Ole Miss. Neither one of those other 2 schools, BYU or Notre Dame, and Notre Dame might even be favored against somebody like Ole Miss or something. The reality is they don't have the best of the best playing, so it's a soap opera to begin with, and in my mind says, if it's a soap opera to begin with, I'm not going to worry too much about it, because ultimately the top 4 teams are the best. And I get it. Ohio State was not in the top 4 last year, and they went on and made an amazing run and blah 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 and all that stuff. But the top 4 teams are the teams that you got to beat. And if you can't beat the top 4 teams, then you're going to have a struggle, and especially this year. So I think that, everybody can cry over their spilled milk and do this and do that. But the truth of the matter is it's not set up to put the best 12 teams on the field and let them play for it, which is, I think, originally what it was supposed to do. It's not. So now it's a soap opera kind of, we need 16 people on a committee to pick these teams and blah, blah, blah. And all this other nonsense. So I just don't want to invest my time into figuring out what these people's perspective on football is, because, most of them don't even know a whole lot about, most anything. So anyway, I just think that that's kind of the way that works. Now, I will say this: um, as we're getting ready to have the bowl games and we're getting ready to have the college football playoffs, I think it's important to understand. For example, when Ohio State played Indiana, and I made the comments before the game, I didn't think either team was going to really give their full best effort. And to be honest, 13-10 defensive slugfest. I don't think either team really gave their full best effort in that game, and I also think this that I think a lot of people like the idea that Ohio State got beat, and they think Indiana is really good. So let me just share this, and this isn't me. This is, I go look at data, and one of the data points that I look at after a game is what's called post-game win expectancy based off of the performance of the teams, right? So you look at the data and you see what happens. Ohio State should have won that game 55% of the time. And Indiana should have only won 45% of the time. Just remember, Ohio State went for it, on 4th and 1 or whatever it was, or 4th and 2 or whatever, and Julian Sain's knee was down. They had to review it. They gave him the first down, then they reversed that. And that was like the 2-yard line or something. So that didn't, they didn't score in that drive. And then they missed a chip shot field goal, which would have put the game into overtime or whatever. But my thoughts on a lot of this stuff is, I think that the public is going to see recency bias on some of these games, and they're going to go and say, oh, well, this, that, and the other. Well, if Ohio State plays Indiana again, guess what? Ohio State will be favored. It won't be Indiana. It'll be Ohio State. So I think as you kind of break down some of these things and you start looking at them, it's very important to understand what you saw, and look at what you saw. We talked about Alabama as being very fraudulent going into the game against Georgia, and Georgia buried them. The data shows Georgia would have won that game 99% of the time. So they just buried that team. So now Alabama gets into the playoff, and they're going to play Oklahoma. So you got two of the most fraudulent teams in there, Oklahoma and Alabama, and they're going to get knocked out, one of the two. And then they got to play Indiana, or I think it's who they play. And I think Indiana will beat both of them because of their offense. They just can't. Those two teams don't have offenses, and if you don't have offenses in the final in these things, you're not going to go very far. So I think as it kind of plays out and where you're kind of looking at stuff, JMU's out and Tulane's out after the first game, and then we move forward and you get some of these. Hey, thanks PB, thanks for the repost there, buddy. I appreciate it. But as you're doing all of this stuff and you're analyzing what's going on, just be sure you really, really look at what you actually saw, and support it. Like so where is there we go. So Alabama, Georgia beat out. Should win expectations was 99%. Texas Tech was 98. Boise was 96. Duke was 62, and that game went into overtime. Indiana was 43.9% win expectancy, and what's that? Oh, Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State was 42% win expectancy to win those games. So those teams are going to play in bowl games, and obviously there's way more to the bowl games now because you got to figure out who's playing and what kids are sitting out for the combine and what kids are nil transfers and all that kind of stuff. So it's a mess, but at the same time, just remember what you saw. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, bowl games, I think 7 teams, Notre Dame right at the top of the list, not accepting a bowl bid. Now it's the teams, that a lot of, like I said, I think it was up to 7 teams have decided not to go to these bowls. And again, just money grabs. And then it's who's playing, who's not playing, what's their motivation. So people get so excited. All these bowl game on TV, therefore I must bet, and it just becomes a bleep show, where these used to be such great times, especially during the holiday seasons where they would kind of get us through the month of December. And now it's, I'll be honest, like the Yukon team right now is happier than Pig and Doodoo. They're back at Fenway, and I think they're playing Army. There's a team excited to be in a bowl game. There's a team that's going to show up, even with a new head coach, excited. Of course, we know Army will be excited, but, sometimes in life, too much is too much. It's an overload, and the product gets stinky, smells soft. Like today's society, a lot of people are soft, I like to say. And watered down's a good word there, Scotty. How about watered down?
Well, let's say it this way. So I think this Saturday, there's a bowl game. It's called the Bucked Up LA Bowl, Boise State and Washington. Okay, I'm good with that. I don't mind watching Boise State play Washington. That's probably a halfway decent game. The line in the game's 8.5. Washington's favored by. And theoretically, it's close enough to the end of the season that, I don't think these kids are going to sit out and all that stuff. It's just like another week of practice. I think they're going to go play. So I think that's a pretty good spot. But then the next bowl game is Troy and Jacksonville State. You got UL Lafayette against Delaware, Missouri State against Arkansas State, Kennesaw State against Western Michigan. Who cares? I mean, I don't mean that any mean way, but nobody wants. Well, let's say it this way: most people don't want to watch these schools. I have to bet on them, so I have to kind of get involved in it to a certain degree. But I don't like to bet on these kids in these schools. They're not good enough to provide a consistent level of performance that's reliable enough to bet on. So I don't want to bet on these games. So not only do I not want to bet on them, I don't want to watch them because it's not the greatest football in the world. They're smallish people. They're not watching these giants go out there and do stuff and are graded the best players. So it's just not. You use the term watered down. There's just a lot of stuff going on here that makes very little sense. And I get it that that's what these kids play for. And if you're I don't know, I'm just looking at where they're playing. Like Kennesaw State and Western Michigan is going to go play at Myrtle Beach Bowl. Are they going to be excited to play at the Myrtle Beach Bowl? It's the greatest thing in the world to go play in some town called Conway, South Carolina, in some little dunky stadium that they can fill up to make it look good. I don't know. It's not like this Boise State Washington game where they're going to play at SoFi. How often do those kids get a chance to play at SoFi? Well, let's go play there. So I think some of this stuff is just amazingly retarded, and I use that in a bad way, I guess. But where people really think that you want to watch that game because it's a bowl game, it's the only one on, and all that stuff. It's an amazingly, in my mind, silly exercise. And you're trying to handicap. What did I say? Kennesaw State and Western Michigan, for example. I get it. They were decent in their playoff games and all that stuff, and they're decent teams, I suppose, but they're nowhere near great teams. And that line is Western Michigan -4. And they're, I don't know. I don't know. It's, to me, college bowl season is great. But at the same time that it's great, there's only a handful of games that I'm, other than the playoffs that I'm interested in. The good matchup, Michigan plays Texas. That's a pretty good matchup. Illinois plays Tennessee. That's not a bad matchup. Some of that stuff as they go. I thought it was a good matchup to when they put Penn State against Clemson. Two of the teams that are both the most let down teams in college football this whole season. Now they get to battle to see who's the crown of the worst, let down team of all of them. So I thought that was kind of fun. So, some of that was kind of neat, but, looking at these matchups and kind of how it all breaks out. But I do want to do an exercise with you today. And we haven't talked about this, and I did it last week, and we talked about it a little bit, or I talked about it a little bit, where as we start to break down the NFL and who's in and who's out and all that stuff. I did it again this morning because, now we have a lot more information. For example, you got the Colts and their quarterback situation, and boy, do they look bad without a quarterback. So they're and the line in that game for this week for the NFL. Where's that Indianapolis game? Indianapolis. Well, that's this week. Next week's game. So Indianapolis, that game is at Seattle. The line opened Seattle -3.5, and now that we got the injury, it's 10.5. Seattle's 10.5 point favorites in that game. And if you look at this Indianapolis schedule, they're not going to win another game. So we talked about it last week as we were saying, hey, Indianapolis, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. Indianapolis was leading the way, and I said I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Looking at their schedule, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs. We talk about last night's game, for example, where Houston, looks really good, especially on defense, and they beat Kansas City in Kansas City, and we just keep saying, well, what's going on with Kansas City? Well, based on if we play this out, and we play it out, there's where's my thing at here? So I play it out the rest of the season, and go look at it. Denver #1 seed, New England #2 seed, Houston #3 seed. So obviously they're the division winners. I got Pittsburgh now winning the division, where I think Baltimore was winning before, and then in the wild cards, I got Buffalo, Jacksonville, and guess who? Kansas City makes it in, and Kansas City ends up. And we can, you can look at this and kind of look at it. Kansas City 6-7 right now, and I got them ending up 10-7. So if Kansas City ends up 10-7, then the next closest team that would have to beat out the Chargers. Where are the Chargers going to be at? Well, they got a pretty tough schedule. I think they lose tonight in a close game, but I think they lose tonight. They're 8-9 the way I played this stuff out. So they're 8-9, and then Cincinnati is 4-9. I don't think they lose. They got a pretty easy schedule. They're going to be 8-9, and then the Colts, they're going to be 8-9. So that puts Kansas City in. So it does matter what the opponents do, and that even gives them flexibility to be in. So I think as we look at this, and we'll put this up, and you can go through it with me, and we can look at it, and maybe you'll pick different games than that I picked in terms of who's going to win games. I had issues with, does Tampa Bay beat Carolina twice because they play them twice, or do they split? Does the Rams win against Seattle when they play the next time? I don't know. I watched the Rams play yesterday, and the Rams are really, really good. And I bet on Seattle yesterday, and they won and covered. But that game was 6-6 at halftime, and they were just floundering, looking terrible. So as things played out, I think in the NFC, I have the Rams, the Packers, the Eagles, the Buccaneers, and then the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Detroit Lions. Well, that's a pretty damn good lineup there. And the team that's probably best that doesn't make it in there is the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears in 9-4. No, they end 10-7, and they don't make it. Dallas ends 10-6-1 and doesn't make it. So that's the way I see it. So that's up to you if you want to kind of play these games out, and it'll show you. You just go through and go, okay, who's going to win this game? Who's going to win this game? And then it totals them up for you at the end. And there's only 4 weeks left, so it doesn't take too long.
Hold on to that. I have so many topics going on in my head. For instance, the Chiefs, again, first play of the game. another tackle, I think it was out. The injuries adding up. The expectations. The been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. The light switch is eventually going to get turned on. Bad matchup for them last night versus Houston. Andy Reid in a tied 10-10 game late in the third decides to go for it on his own 38 or whatever it was. A lot of crazy things going on there. The Bears go from the 1 seed, I think, down to 7. Again, driving to tie it up. Do they go for 2? And then, Caleb throws a pick. There, you talk about the Ravens. The clarity I woke up this morning. The clarity I woke up this morning in the AFC is obviously the Colts are out because of the injury. They don't have a quarterback. Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning's not walking through that door. And mentally, the Chiefs are out. It's just one of those years that they reset. And, don't forget, they got to play Denver again. That was, if they beat Houston, here comes the momentum. All right, they're going to beat Denver in the rematch. It's at Kansas City. Scotty, I've never heard a Kansas City crowd so dead in my life. For the whole first half, I didn't hear one of those, oh, yeah. Nothing. It was like a Morgan there. It was like they knew what their fate was. I'm going to go back to the Ravens game. Lamar was hurt, comes back. They were 5-1 their last 6, but it's not the same Lamar. It's not the same Raven team. Scotty, and I know. Listen. There are so many flawed processes in the NFL. I want to go back to no review. I want to go back literally to you paying the officials. It's a lightning fast game. They make the call on the field and you live with it. In what bleeping world do you catch a ball and get 2 steps, not 1, but 2 steps clearly in the end zone? I'm talking about likely, and that touchdown, which would have given them the lead. And hats off, we had the Steelers over here in our Westgate Superbook contest. But likely is, whether it was last year on the end line, first game of the year against Kansas City. This year, going in, gets strip sacked. This year, going in, fumbles. It's always likely. They called it a damn touchdown on the field. And I had no stake in the game. None. Ball out here, 1 foot, 2 foot, and they come up with some asinine, well, he really didn't make the 3rd step. Meanwhile, the ball just got across the goal line on a tush push, or you got to hit the putt. It's so asinine. It's all about the rules.
Well, here's where I'm going to probably be a naysayer in some of this stuff, and I don't know how other than to say it. I don't get worked up over the officials. I don't get worked up over calls. I don't get worked up on that stuff. Some are going to go your way, some are going to go against you. I felt like I had some of that stuff in the games that I bet on, where they either went my way or they didn't go my way. And everything's an interpretation. Whether it's a holding foul, whether it was, a targeting call, or, what a personal, like these damn stupid personal foul calls where, what was the game I was watching? I think it was Green Bay or something, where the Chicago Bear player grabbed the guy by the neck and, did one of these, like these, and then the Packer player responded and they didn't see the guy grabbing by the neck. So the guy that got grabbed by the neck got a 15-yard personal foul. I'm like, what are you talking about? But here's how I'm going to address this. There are roughly somewhere in the neighborhood to 75 to 100 plays in an NFL game. College football can be more than that because of the way the time clock works and how fast they move and stuff like that. And I get it. Some of these plays are way more critical than other plays. And you're talking about scoring plays and some other stuff. But I will say it this way. It's not necessarily as gloom and doom as people make it out to be when something like this happens. It's just not. Yeah, there are other ways and means to do certain things and move the football, and or baseball the same way, or any other sport that you would have an umpire make choices and decisions and things. Everybody complains about balls and strikes and this and that, and all this stuff. So I think there's that misses the whole point of why did they lose the game. Well, in Baltimore's case, if I pull this up, where is Baltimore? If I go look at Baltimore and Pittsburgh, right? Where is Minnesota, New England? So Pittsburgh was 0.24 EPA positive, and Baltimore was 0.2. Baltimore was negative 17% EPA in passing. Baltimore had, in terms of where is explosive plays, Baltimore had explosive plays in negative 0.11 in terms of sacks. Like, they're getting outplayed. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't make a play or do this or that to help them. And maybe those data numbers and stuff suggest, well, maybe that would have been better. But keep in mind that of those 80 to 100 plays or whatever it is, they're getting beat on most of them. And if they're getting beat, they're getting beat. So you got to figure out a way to win the game. And I think
they did.
Well, I
they
think
did,
because what was the score? The score was 27-22.
But Scotty, my point is, when you're making up rules as you go,
but you're not. It's all interpretation. Nobody's making up rules. I know.
Not you. No. My point, very simply, is, remember when they first started this system, when the paid referee makes a call on the field, there has to be overwhelming evidence. My point on that call, and sometimes you get beat for 59 out of the 60 minutes and you find a way to win the game. Okay, I didn't have a penny on the game. My point in the matter is, when it becomes the ref show or New York or whatever you want to call them, and it was called a touchdown on the field, the guy clearly got 2 feet down. And now there's an interpretation in what rule book that says, well, technically he needed to get the 3rd foot down now. It makes no sense. That's my point, Scotty.
No, I hear what you're saying, but we're just guys that watch the game, Jeff. We're not guys that have to read the rule book. We're not guys that have to interpret the rules. And I think there's perfect evidence of when the ACC plays these college football games, of exactly what they go through when they do a review, and what the review process looks like, because they allowed us in to watch that process and what it looks like. And to be quite honest, they're not going over rules in that either. They're going over, well, does he have 2 feet down? Does he have this? Has he done a football move? Has he held the ball long enough? Has he blah, 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 all this stuff. And they make the best choice they can make. And in my opinion is that whatever choice they make is whatever choice they make. And we're not in control of that. We're just not. So you and I are going to disagree on this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just not, because that's not my job. That's the officiating crew's job. It's the people that do the rules and all that stuff to interpret whatever those things are. And you can sit there and listen to Terry McCauley and I don't know, whoever those guys are that were old referees, and now they sit there and go, well, this is why this, and this is why this, and this is why this. And sometimes they agree with the call on the field, and sometimes they don't. And it's I think all interpretation of whatever the rules are and whatever the situation is. And it's an ever flow, and it moves forward and things go on. And sure, it's a touchdown that got taken off the board, or it's this or it's that. I'm sitting there watching some of these games and go, well, that's holding. You can see him. He just tackled the guy trying to go rush the quarterback. Well, they didn't call it. Well, why didn't they call it? Well, maybe they didn't see it. Or maybe they just said, I don't care. I'm not going to call a flag on this. I called holding on the last 3 plays. I don't know what the scenario is. Don't know. But the reality becomes is as you play out the game, there are so many other plays you could have made or can make that overcome any of this stuff. So I get it. I get all of the noise and I get all of the stuff that surround it and I get all of the hype that goes with it. But it's all minutia. It doesn't matter. It's all, and again, you and I are going to disagree on this, but I don't see it that way. I see it as whatever. It is what it is. You made your ruling. Let's move forward. It's like the Ohio State kid his knee was down. Well, where was the ball at? Well, they can't see where the ball is. They just assume where it is. You didn't get the first down, so they marked it the other way. Now go win the game a different way, right? Go stop them. If you give up the ball at the 2-yard line or whatever it was, and if your defense, which is the best in the country, so to speak, can stop them from getting a first down right there, you're going to get the ball back in scoring position and go ahead. Well, they didn't. They let Indiana drive the ball down. Of course, Indiana didn't do anything with it at that time, but they drove down the field and then punted, and then Ohio State had to come all the way back. So point being is that there's way more to this than just, that particular play in that particular spot in that particular situation.
The funny is at 4:00, Denver going in for a 10-point win. And of course, everyone in the world saw the Portnoy video heaved down by the quarterback to the Raiders, and a phantom flag. Therefore, Raiders come in, kick a field goal, lands on 7.
Yeah, but think about that. What's the point of even kicking the field goal?
Technically, there is. If the Raiders were in the playoff hunt, there was a reason, because one of the the extended tiebreakers is points, this, that. I thought. See, now I'm laughing because I thought that was comical, because the refs throw a flag for no reason, and that allowed the Raiders to get up there, and you're either going to throw a Hail Mary into the end zone, or
that's what I thought they were going to do. It's like, what's the point of kicking that field goal?
To take the short points. Fuck it. Excuse me.
I get it.
That field goal lets them cover, and the game goes over there. Again, there was so much to talk about. We could talk for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours today on so many subjects. As you broke down, and that exercise that you wanted to do, I want to use it tomorrow. That's why I'm pushing that back. I want to go through it. Yeah, because I said all along, like this week, Buffalo now comes to New England. I said Buffalo should be 1.5 point favorites, and there was an opening line of Patriots 2-point favorites. Well, Buffalo is favored in that game. The NFC is just a juggernaut. Rams, you're right. Rams look the total part. They do. And here comes Seattle chewing its food. Donald, the company, says, hold my beer. They put up 31 in the second half, or however 30. I still think those are the two best teams in the NFC right now, is Seattle and the Rams. And we talked
a question about Seattle. Like, they have great defense. They can score some points, but
your question is Sam Darnold, because what he does in big games.
So, well, yes, but at the same time, where's their running game?
They have one.
I don't know. They didn't have one yesterday. They didn't run the ball yesterday very well at all against an Atlanta defense. So when they're going to start playing some of these teams, I don't know where their balance is going to come from. So I have some concerns about Seattle. I think Seattle's going to be a great home team in the playoffs. Like, nobody wants to play in Seattle, so I think that's going to be a great advantage for them. And then on the backside of that, Njigba's been, he's been, I don't know if you want to call him the offensive player of the year or not, but he's got 75 million catches, and he's a lot of their offense. So you take him away. I'm concerned that like the Rams, they got 2 or 3 guys you can throw the ball to. They got a great running game. They got a great defense. So they can do more. And that doesn't mean that Seattle, I think, is a bad team. Don't get me wrong. I think when you start to look at it, you go and say, well, what happens if Seattle plays a team like, I don't know, Green Bay, What happens if they play a team like, I don't know, say San Francisco or somebody like that? How I think the Rams would be pretty good favorites in a lot of those spots. I don't know that Seattle's going to be that big a favorite in some of those spots. So I get it. I think Seattle probably isn't the number 2 team, and the Rams are number 1. I think Seattle is really good, but I have my concerns. I think they play great defense though, and I think that's what separates them from, say, like the 49ers, for example. I think the 49ers defense is a little overrated, McCaffrey's been really good, but they take away him. I don't know who they're going to throw the ball to, the tight end all the time.
Well, and I can't get this out of my mind. I mean, it's just apples and oranges. Go back a week ago, and this Rams team gave up 28 points or whatever the final score was to Carolina, and Stafford had 3 turnovers. Go back to when Seattle was at the Rams, and Seattle had 5 turnovers, yet they were kicking a 61-yard field goal to win the game. It's all predicated on who wins the turnover battle. And both, I'm not comparing to see the Rams on paper, because of Stafford, because of McVay, should be and are the favorites in the NFC. But my point that I've been saying for a few weeks, Seattle's the most dangerous. If you go back about 3-4 weeks ago when I said, whoever gets the 1 seed is blessed because you're going to stay away from Seattle till potentially the championship game. And Seattle, with that defense, can travel. The problem is big stage, bright lights. Which Sam Darnold do you get? And in a playoff setting, even 1 turnover may be 1 too many, Scotty.
Oh, no question. No question. What's interesting about that is if you look at the standings, and I was looking at this earlier today, standings, and you look at the NFC, point differential does matter. It does have a separation of say talent and let people know, like the Eagles are plus 21. Of course, they play tonight. The Packers are plus 75. The Detroit Lions are plus 90. So those are, quote, the best teams until you get to these guys. You have the Rams plus 152 and the Seahawks plus 161. I mean, that's how much more dominant they are over some of these other teams, and how their offenses have scored. Like you think the Rams score a lot of points. They've scored 379 points this year, but the Seahawks, they've scored 387. So they've scored more points than the Rams. And I think a lot of people wouldn't tell you that. I think they would tell you the Rams have scored more points. In the AFC, you have one team. There's one team that's plus 100, and that's the New England Patriots, Jeff. Your New England Patriots plus 100, and everybody else is plus 83, plus 56, plus 75, plus 91, plus 73, plus 25, plus 63. So I think, as you kind of look at this, there's some very good teams in the NFC. I mean, these teams are good. In the AFC, I'm not sure what's going to happen when, the AFC battles out to finish out to see who's going to win that tournament to end up facing the NFC's best. I would lay money this way. I would lay money that the NFC is going to be the favorite in the Super Bowl.
Last but not least, winter meetings start. Hot stove. I want you take your thoughts. Anything could happen. We know.
Hey, there's been a signing this morning, by the way.
Oh, who was it?
Mike Soroka, signed by the Arizona Diamondbacks. Just like you know.
Okay. Before we get to the hot stove, and again, why systems, why the world is flawed, and again, I woke up this morning, I was going over some stuff, and I'm in one of those spots mentally, and again, I'm not trying to debate you and me. It's just one of those weird, because I sent out a tweet yesterday on X, and I'll read the tweet to everyone because it was kind of funny, and how the day progressed, and basically in a nutshell, I said, what a day in sports today. Each topic succeeded the next. Notre Dame out of NCAA playoffs, likely TD overturned. Raiders miracle backdoor cover. Jeff Kent elected to the MLB Hall of Fame over Bonds and Clemens. And before we get to the hot stove, I know they're not allowing the steroids, guys, and I get all that. I sent this to my buddy in Montana, RT, and I says, try to explain to someone that doesn't watch baseball like we do how Jeff Kent is in the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think that one, it's an interesting scenario of what happened in the 80s, I don't know, or 90s or whatever you want to call it. I always thought Jeff Kent was a good player. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player, but that's just me. I have more of an issue with guys like Dale Murphy not being in there, because I thought Dale Murphy was the king shit back in the day, and I don't know what to do with Don Mattingly. I am, he was my favorite player when I was younger, so I loved him, and I thought he was a surefire Hall of Famer type of guy, but he didn't play long enough, and he hurt his back, and I get all of that. So there's rules. I shouldn't say rules. There's interpretation of all of these things, and I would say that the interpretation of what those guys did, and I shouldn't say quotes, because at this point the only reason they're not in is because of what they did. I don't think there's any speculation anymore. The Bonds and the Clemenses of the world, and that can go on and on and on to Sosa and everybody else. So you cheat physically, and put yourself. And so the way baseball has recovered from all of this is because, if you think about it, those guys that were taking this juice and taking the stuff, what's that guy's name? Palmeiro, right? Palmeiro or whatever.
Raphael.
Yeah. So he wasn't that good. He was good because he took the juice, and that juice gave him an extra advantage over the other players, right? So when you start to think about where baseball was, you had older guys starting to get paid more than younger guys, and older guys playing until they were 40 something before they were done, because they were still way productive. Well, they were way productive because they were taking junk that made them, way better than they really were. So they get that out of the game, and now what does the game become? It's a youth game. You got young players developing and growing, and it's exciting to watch them run, and the speed they play with, and the talent that they have, and the things, as compared to the old washed up guys that took the juice and hit the home run. So baseball has evolved into a game that is quicker, faster, better, more talented players, more things happening on the field. And because of that, it's more interesting to watch. And, I think Hall of Fame related wise, the guys who vote on the Hall of Fame are all writers and stuff. So the writers didn't like it. The writers hated it, and they're not voting them in. So, and then, now that they go to they didn't get in by the writers, they have to have the committee of other things to help them get in. And those are a lot of players. The players liked Jeff Kent to get in. So I don't fault anybody who makes the Hall of Fame. I mean, you've got to be a good player or a great player. And in a lot of people's eyes, I guess he was. I mean, he's the leading home run hitter for second baseman and stuff like that. So no issues, and I don't know that now anybody's out there going, well, he didn't deserve to be in. I don't really hear that. And if a guy like Fred McGriff made it in, and Dale Murphy and Mattingly didn't, I think you're going to hear the comments about, well, those two guys should have been in too, and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Well, they avoided that because, Kent's in and those guys aren't. So,
before I get your closing thoughts on the NFL game, we'll use that to wrap up there. Opening day. Already one signing, hot stove league. Tough spot for both sides in my mind. Meaning, there's a real good possibility at this time next year. We're talking lockout, yada yada yada. You can play the long game. Hey, we'll let a couple of the big fish drop, and then those 50 other guys looking for a job as each day the ticker's going, and there goes another 100,000. Then I come to you and say, hey, Scotty, I know you want to play. I know you're scratching an itch. Listen, why don't you just do a 1-year contract, bet on yourself, not knowing what the following year's for. But again, no Otani, no Soto, no big star 700, 800 million, 650 to set the market, the Schwarbers, the Tuckers, the Bregmans. Day one, we're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be here Thursday. We're going to be here Friday. Day one, give me the Scotty Webb Biff's Almanac. Give me something to hold on to for tomorrow morning.
Well, I'm not sure how opening day at the meetings is going to be, to be honest. I guarantee you there's already plenty of conversations that's happened before this. But now you're going to have, teams meeting with agents, and teams meeting with teams live and in person. And, they give each other a wet willy, and all of a sudden, man, you got a deal, right? So, I'm not sure how that's going to play. Let me just say it this way. On X, you can do a lot of different things. And one of the things that I do is I make a list. I have lists on X of things I follow. So it just makes it a lot easier. And especially this time of year for baseball. So I have two different things. One is a list I created, and I have it's called MLB Reporters. There's 180 reporters on my list. And anytime they tweet something, it's in that list. So I get all the information like this when a trade happens or when a signing happens or whatever. I just gotta refresh my list page, right? So let me tell you this. If you go into that, you can follow my list if you want. There are 9 people that already follow my list. So if you want to do that, you can get the information. I also have another list that I follow that somebody else created that has, 300 baseball reporters on it. I don't like that one as well as the one I like because I've kind of done what I think is a little bit of homework on the reporters, and I don't just have every Joe Schmo throwing stuff out there and all that stuff. So they're a little different. So they're a little more qualified in my mind. Anyway, point being is, without a tool like this, it's very difficult to keep up. Like you can't spend all day watching the baseball network or whatever to figure out who's doing what. And heaven forbid you got to listen to Matt Vasgersian all day long. And not that I don't mind him, but I mean, holy crap. And Harold Reynolds and all these other guys, I do like those guys over certain other channels that you might watch, but man, it just gets monotonous of what you're listening to. So anyway, point being is you get information. And one of the things I think that's going to come across is what do teams like the Yankees do? And we talked about this a little bit. I guess Carlos Rodon is expected to be a late April or May starter. Like he had bone spurs removed out of his elbow. Okay, well, that means, late April puts him right in to be ready for the regular season. May means he's going to miss a couple starts maybe. And then it says Garrett Cole. Well, Garrett Cole's targeting May or June. Well, I mean, that misses the first, 50 games, 60 games. And then it says Anthony Volpe not expected back until April. Well, if he's not expected back until April, and then he's got to go get ramped up to play and stuff, maybe that's going to be an issue. So do they go get other guys to compensate for some of this stuff? I don't know the answers to these questions. So as I sit here and start thinking about who's going to do what and where things are going to go. It depends on what hype you believe and what hype you don't. What's the guy's name that works for NBC? Tom Verducci. Tom Verducci is out there preaching that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to go sign Tucker, and then the Red Sox are going to pivot and go get Bichette. That's what he's out there telling everybody in the world. And I get it. That may very well happen. And it could happen. But if it does happen, then great for Tom Verducci for saying, oh, blah, blah, blah. But listen, if you're believing that hype and you're believing that crap, you're believing the wrong things, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen. And there's a lot of things that, you sit there and there's a really good guy in Tampa. His name is Mark Tompkin, who does the Rays. And, one of the things that he's never really done is he's never been a hype guy. He's never been, a blow up guy. But he put a tweet out the other day that I thought was kind of funny. And it's him walking into the baseball winter meetings, and there's a sign on a glass door that says baseball winter meetings 2025. And he goes, I guess I've been in the right place. And, he walks in. But his tweet basically said was, okay, Rays fans, if you're a Rays fans, tell me your dream case scenario of what you're hoping the team accomplishes, and then tell me what you think they're actually going to do. And I'm looking at this going, there's Rays fans out there their dream case scenario is to get Tucker. Or to, they were mentioned in the Ketel Marte trade, stuff like that. And then their reality came back to, we'll probably sign, Zach Lytle again or something like that. So it's interesting how some of this stuff happens, but trust me when I tell you that you got to be careful what you listen to and what hype you believe in, because if you're a hype guy, you could get really let down by some of the stuff that you hear and where things go and all this. If you're a Blue Jays fan and Tucker doesn't sign with the Blue Jays, and I don't know, let's just say he goes signs with the Astros again, making this up. But say he goes and signs with the Astros again, and and you thought you were a Blue Jays fan and you were going to get, just like you thought you were going to get Shohei Ohtani when he's on his airplane and blah blah blah. Remember that? I mean, people have lost their mind when it comes to how to prove this or that or whatever. Look, it's way better to not speculate. And it's way better to sit there and go, hey, it would be nice. I think it would be great. But once it's done, evaluate what they've done and then give them a grade and try to figure out where they go and what their next steps are, right? Because you've got several things in play here, right? You've got free agent signings, and these guys are together now. So you're going to have Major League Baseball trades, and not just prospects. These aren't just prospects being traded now. These will be big league players for big league players. And you can evaluate that stuff on your own. There's the websites that you can go to that will evaluate it based on dollars and cents and what players are worth and whether somebody overpaid or underpaid and all that stuff. It's out there. So do your homework, do the things that you want to do. But I guess the biggest thing I would say is listen to what the general managers of each team, when they have these interviews with people, how they view their teams, especially right now, because they're going to be optimists. And if they're optimists right now, they're going to be starting to think about how strong they like this or how strong they like that or whatever. A team like the Oakland A's, who I don't know if you even can call them the Oakland A's anymore. They played, in all these different cities, and I think they're 1 year away yet from being a Las Vegas A's. What do they do? How do they react? They got a pretty core nucleus of guys. This Kurtz kid was Rookie of the Year last year. Plus they got an offensive lineup that can match up against quite a few other teams. They don't have much pitching yet, but you get to a point where you sit there and go, well, do I go sign with the, I don't know, whatever A's team they are, and then we get ready to play in Las Vegas in 2027, and then they lock them out, and they can't play in the new stadium and stuff, and be like, well, I don't know what's going on with this team. So it's interesting, all of this stuff of how it all plays out and who can spend money and what kind of money they're going to spend. And like the Cardinals. When is the last time the St. Louis Cardinals have been in a rebuild, total tear down rebuild mode? And not just been, one of the front runners to win. Well, they're not a front runner. To be honest, they're one of the worst runners. That they could be the as it kind of sits, as they start trading away pieces and doing different things. The St. Louis Cardinals could be one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball this year. They could be. They got a terrible pitching staff as it is right now, and then their best players are Donovan and guys like that, Brandon Donovan. And that's not saying a lot. So I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying that he doesn't match up to superstars. So they start breaking away some of those guys. They got nothing, and if you got nothing and you got no pitching, you're not going to do well. And they don't look to me like they're going to win a lot of games as they sit today. So what they do and how they build and all, it's just all interesting stuff. And again, use your Twitter list, follow these guys. They're going to tell you, right away, boom, boom, because they're all there. The reporters are all sitting there waiting on something to report on. And just don't buy into the bull crap that the reporters tell you either, because, it's bull crap. So you just do it, listen to them, what they trade and where they go, and how injuries are affecting teams, and obviously how salary and money and stuff like that affects what they do. But I would think that we're going to get a handful. I don't know if all of them, but a handful of the top guys I think are going to go this week. A handful. And, I sit here and I read some kind of article. I don't remember who wrote it because maybe I just blew it off and said this is stupid. That there was a greater chance than a lesser chance that the Tigers were going to trade Skubal. Well, if the Tigers trade Skubal, well, that's going to be the biggest deal of the whole summer or the whole off season. So that'll blow up everything. So I guess we'll see how all of this stuff kind of pans out and see where things end up, and be surprised a little bit and maybe not surprised, and figure out like, what do the Diamondbacks need this pitcher for that they just signed? I forget what was his name. Who did I tell you they just signed? They just signed. There he is, Mike Soroka. Look, I get it. Mike Soroka pitched pretty well last season for the Cubs, but he didn't pitch a lot, and he's not a great pitcher. And the Diamondbacks got him. So are the Diamondbacks pitcher?
Isn't that going to replace Gallon?
Well, maybe. I don't think he's going to be as good as Gallon. So they already lost Merrill Kelly. So they went all in, remember, on pitching, and they got Eduardo Rodriguez, and they got what was the guy's name?
The biggest waste of money. I told everyone to say Corbin Burns, stay away.
Yep, they got Corbin Burns, and what was the other guy's name? They got his arm fell off and ended up he didn't pitch much for them either. So they had issues with their pitching, and they thought, well, these guys are all going to hit, and they're all going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then, Mertel's out there on the field crying because somebody said something about his mama or something. I don't know what's going on with that team. It's just an amazing thing, and they got rid of their first baseman there that they really liked, and he didn't do much. I think he went to the Astros and didn't do anything. So it's just an amazing process of how baseball is, and what the camaraderie looks like, and how each player plays off of each other, and whether they're any good or whether they're not any good. But there's reasons for stuff. I got Mike Soroka for my pitching staff. That means I'm going to get rid of this guy, or I'm going to do that, or or however it works out. Whatever. I mean, Yes, Gallon is going to go somewhere, and he's a decent arm, but if he wasn't the best pitcher on the Diamondbacks last year, I don't even know if he was the second best pitcher on the Diamondbacks last year. So as things kind of play out, and as they go, some of these guys, they miss their worth window.
My speakers are starting to play games with me, so my headphones. So, myself and Scotty will be back tomorrow, same time, same bat station. Hopefully with some signings. Quick 30 seconds to 1 minute. Thoughts on NFL tonight? Philly opened at 2 with a 43.5. Money crashing in on the under. Down to 41.5. Philly -2, Scott.
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where if you're a guy that can sit there and go, I don't need to bet a game, then don't bet. I think the numbers are relatively close. I ran it through the process here and comes out 24-20 with Philadelphia 24, Chargers 20, and 10,000 simulations. It basically says, look, the Eagles are going to win 55% of the games, and they're going to cover the spread 53% of the time. Okay, well, that ain't good enough for me to bet. You know what I mean? Like I don't get it. Then I further up questions, right? Well, if that's the case, do I play the money line? Well, the money line I can get is -126. Well, that's not good enough value to bet. So you want it to be like 115 or something. So 126 is too high. So then I looked at it and I go, well, what number do I need? Well, according to my AI system, it says you need -1, -105. It's not going to ever get there. So I think if you have -1, -105, and then that's an EV positive bet, then you bet it. If you can get that, not good for you. But I think you run into the problems of, how many yards they gave up last week, the Eagles, to on the ground. It was like 250 yards I think that they gave up rushing against them. And then you're going to bet on the Chargers with a guy that's got a broken hand as a quarterback. I get it; it's his other hand. But what does it actually look? How does this game really match up? And I think that's sort of the problem is. Sometimes the Chargers come out there and play and they have good defense. Sometimes the Chargers go out there and they don't. I think they're a scrappy team, so I think they want to fight and stay in the game. I think their head coach is scrappy, but I think the Eagles are the better team. But the Eagles also are banged up on the offensive line, and their number one run stopper, Carter, is out. So it's just one of these games where you sit there and go, well, are they going to let Hurts run the ball a little bit? Are they finally going to give the ball to Barkley and let him run the ball? If they do all this stuff, maybe they win and cover the game. If they don't, who knows? I think the Eagles win. But I'm not willing to bet it. That's my 30-second spiel.
Shout out to PB. Shout out to Mr. Lucky on his way back soon from Japan. Dr. Lance, everyone watching and listening, we thank you. Myself and Scotty will be back tomorrow, 9:15, 9:30 at the latest. Hopefully with some signings. We'll do some recap on the Philly Chargers game. Maybe talk about a few line moves. Also had the Army-Navy game on Saturday, which I was a part of 2 years ago on the field and on Radio Row when they were in Boston. Such an amazing spectacle. Boise State, Washington on Saturday as well. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Mr. Scotty Webb at Webby20 MLB. Wish everyone a blessed day. Enjoy yourself. Guys, remember this. It's the first day of the new week. If you had a bad week last week, well...
college football, I was 3-0 on the plays I gave out. That was good.
It was very good.
I forgot about that.
ECSI VIPs 10-5 for the week, graded, and then yesterday with our Sunday fun day and family day, we cashed late on the Ducks team total over. So let's have a week. 20. Let me just do the quick math. 23 days left in this month. Let's finish strong. Guys, enjoy yourselves. Locally, 27 degrees. Bundle up and stay tuned.